Hey, it's Chris, Liege Games. So a lot of you have wondered, okay, Chris, what games do you like? What games are you interested in? You know, you talk about all of these other games that you see popping up on Kickstarter or retail or on the hotness, and this, that, the other. So I said, okay, what would be the easiest way to give you some of my games? Now, I don't do like top 10s very well in terms of if you asked me to rank my top 10 games, I don't know what those would be necessarily. But what I might be able to tell you though, and this is why I'm going to do this video, is if my collection was all of a sudden gone, what are the 10 games that I would say, this is the 10 games that I'm going to be picking up first to replenish my collection as a whole? To give me variability, to give me a little bit of everything, to make me have only maybe a few games, but the depth and the enjoyment much, much, much more than that small number may suggest. So that is why I wanted to make this list. So, that thing, apart from that thing, let's do this thing. So now, again, I'm going to preface this by saying these aren't in any particular order, but just games that I love that I would love to have and would not want to have a collection without. And so number 10 on that list is Bullet. Bullet with a Heart from Level 99 Games. This is already going to be one of my top games of 2021. The replayability is there. I did a review of it earlier this month. If you want to check that out, check it out. I love the deluxeification of it, and I say that as a non-deluxeification person. But the variability, the shoot-'em-up real-time element of this game, and the nuance that comes with each of these characters in order to avoid a la, old school invaders with the aliens coming down and you're trying to shoot them before they can get to the bottom and destroy the base on Earth. Well, think of the same thing only with bullets that you're randomly pulling from a bag and using variable powers to adjust it so that they don't get to the bottom, so that you can clear them either by blowing them up or, in this case, like, moving them off of the side of the map, or just getting rid of them so then instead of going to you, they go to the opponent clockwise next to you. And now you only have 3 minutes to do it each time. Each character is so unique that you play it once and you want to go, I want to do that again with that character because I want to be able to do it better, because now I know what I'm doing, because the nuance is there. And now imagine that with, I don't know, like 8 or 10 characters in the base game. Now they've already announced a second expansion, Bullet Orange, which is going to be released in July 2021. And there's an unnamed third expansion rumored as well. It's just a lot of fun. You can play it in 15 to 20 minutes at max, and you can play 3-4 times an hour and still have the amount of tactical strategy that is fun, but not overwhelming, not too AP prone, especially with a timer. I personally love the timer. I know some people are going to like it, but 3 minutes is a heck of a lot more than it sounds when you're doing this. And it does not feel like anything else out there. And Level 99 Games is tremendous at that. And some people, it's definitely hit or miss for, but for a majority of their stuff, it is a hit for me. And this is why it is number 10 on the list, period. Speaking of games I've put a review on out, this was actually before I started the review log review series. This was at the very beginning of my channel, so if you're newer, you may have completely missed this. But this is The Loop. Pandasaurus just picked this up for English retail release, but it was released in very small English quantities, like 100 back in the end of 2020. Now what it is it's a cooperative time travel-esque game where you are time traveling agents, secret agents, trying to prevent the evil Dr. Fu. Yes, and that lends it to all of the Fu fighting jokes. They play and fall right into them. They don't try and avoid it. They go with it, and it makes it a lot of fun and a lot of silliness at the same time. But don't be fooled by the box cover and the cuteness of this. This is not an easy game. It's also got this very unique mechanism of how you decide what is getting pressured a la pandemic style by dropping cubes, these red cubes that you can see here, in the middle and having them randomly go out one of 3 spouts, which is either terribly relieving or terribly frustrating, depending on how you feel about that and depending on what actually happens. You are going to be moving and manipulating these tokens of bad guy enemy Fu robots around the board to eliminate them, using special powers from cards from different eras that a la sort of a deck building mechanism that allow you to sort of mitigate things on your turn in the first place. But then the looping mechanism from whence the game title is derived allows you to untap your cards and replay them again on the same turn, potentially multiple times even on the same turn, depending on how many green cubes are on the area that you're on. It is Of the pandemic-esque cooperative style games, my favorite, bar none, right now. And I say that having really only played 2 of the 4 modes that are available, because there are 4 modes that are distinctly different in how you want to play this game. And it is amazing for that reason too. It is also difficult. Do not be fooled by the cartoony-esque appearance of this game. This is going to be, I think, a big hit. Now, again, some people are not going to like this because the randomness of dropping those cubes. It is going to frustratingly irritate a lot of people when it comes out at retail, and a lot of the bigger channels probably get it and are probably going to not pan it just for those sorts of reasons. But if this is your vibe, this is a great game. And it replaces the other ones if you had me choose in my collection, and that is why it is number 9 on this list. Number 8. Again, if you didn't know that this was coming, I am a CMON fan. I am a somewhat CMON fanboy. I am a non-Zombicide CMON fanboy. And I will make the argument right now, and I am going to be doing a review on this because you guys voted for it. Cthulhu Death May Die is one of CMON's best games out there, period. I think it is also probably, arguably, the best dungeon crawl, scenario driven, non-campaign, miniature style game out there, with incredible amount of variability, tactical depth, and just a whole lot of chaotic dice rolling, messy fun. Is it for everybody? Heck no. Is it everything you want out of something that is easy to get to the table, scenario driven, incredible depth, replayability, mixability between the variable conditions of enemies, bosses, modularity of the board, variable players and player abilities, and upgrades? Absolutely. It is everything those and more. The miniatures are great. The price point is okay. The Unspeakable box, which is unspeakably unavailable now, is the biggest detriment to it, because it is a CMON Kickstarter exclusive. And it was, honestly, it was downplayed. This game was poo-pooed on Kickstarter when it launched. I mean, even though it raised 7 figures, it was one of those, like Marvel United, that people looked down on because of what it was coming off as. And now that it's out, it is thought in relatively high regard of people who like this style of game. Myself included. It is not the most difficult game, although it can be very difficult. It is not the deepest game in terms of the mechanisms and the tactics and the Gloomhaven-esque crawling style. It's not. It's not meant to be, though, either. It's dice rolling, horror schemed. Can I blast you before they blast me? Beer and pretzels-esque, as much as I hate that term, fun. And you can play it with anybody and have a good time. That's why it, in its iterations, would be number 8 on this list. Now, the one thing I'll say, on a side caveat, before I go to number 7 here, this was the worst thing about it, and I did not like this then. I do not like it now. Pledge locking gameplay content behind this monstrosity of a plastic thing for like 200 and some bucks. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. I'll leave it at that. Now, we'll stay with that theme for number 7. Number 7 is right up that ilk, but we are going a little bit more complex, a little bit more campaign-driven, well, a lot more campaign-driven, let's be clear here, genius, with a different theme, with different nuances, with upgradable, level-up powers, abilities, customization. Along that ilk. That same coin, but different side of the coin style of dungeon crawlers. And that is Middara. This was one of the most unsure Kickstarters I've backed. I actually backed this for $1 when it originally ran in like 2015 or 2016. I canceled my $1 pledge, and then I got in on the late pledge like 2 years later because I saw what they had done. I saw the passion that was there and the product that was coming, and I said, this is going to be a big hit, and I got back in. And a lot of people don't like it because they don't like the Japanime. They don't like the anime style in general. And you know what? To each their own. I, again, personally love it. Does it have the best miniatures out there? No. Does it have some of the more unique, more creative, more entertaining, just done in a different way style of upgrades, campaign, and dungeon crawl? Absolutely. This campaign book is sort of one of the ones that has set off the recent trend in the past year and a half to 2 years of things just this ilk. You could make an argument that Storm Sunder is a direct following, a direct reimplementation, a chip off of the old block, if you will, based on what you saw here, done now in another nuanced, interesting, intriguing way. And it shows because their second Kickstarter went from like 150,000 to like a couple million. They took the KDM-esque upgrades, weapons, abilities, and they imported it in an anime shell, got rid of some of the difficulty because, let's be honest, KDM is more of a puzzle that you solve rather than a hack and slash, and they made this more than a hack and slash with that style, along with an actual campaign narrative with giving you choices and options and consequences. Again, I'm not disparaging KDM. I have a copy of that too. But if you asked me to choose right now, I'm choosing this. And that's before I get expansions 2 and 3 that are still yet to be delivered. This is the ultimate dungeon crawl campaign style experience for me to date. The art, to say the least, is tremendous. The AI, great. How the interactions work, I love it. Now again, is it everybody's? No, but it's mine, and this is my list. And you can tell me why I'm wrong in the comment section. But that is why it made the list. Now, number 6 here, I'm going back to level 99 games. Now, speaking of games that I do not get to play anywhere near enough, this is Millennium Blades. The subtitle is a CCG, a TCG, if you're more familiar with that, simulator card game. Basically, they said, you know what? You know Magic the Gathering. You know Yu-Gi-Oh! That's Pokemon. What if we could make that whole scene into a card game? A meta of that scene on the tabletop, all wrapped up in one session. That is what this game is. You simulate opening packs and getting rare cards and building your deck on a time-constrained matter in order to prepare for the upcoming tournament, where you are constructing a very small select set of cards and the synergy that is needed based on special rules or bonus points that you're going to be getting, while sort of competing against yourself, but also sort of competing against your competitors in terms of how your decks may or may not interact. And they have done pop culture parody to the max in this game, as you can see illustrated just by this one card. And they take everything in terms of theme and synergy and components and iconography, and they cram it all into this game that you would think is just the most chaotic mess of a game that you could ever get, and it somehow turns into this masterpiece of symphony of sweaty palms, sweaty armpits, and tournament style flip and play that is among the most unique and most enjoyably stress-inducing games I have ever played. The setup, the cleanup is an absolute, utter chore, and I abhor it. But I would take it every single time if I could play this game more often, because this is a niche within a niche within a niche game that some people are just going to look at, think about, or even attempt to play and just hate it. But for me, it takes all of the elements I like of the TCG, LCG, CCG theme scene, distills them into one setting, and allows me to get the full experience without having to spend a fraction of the money to get it in the first place. And that's with the base game alone, let alone the 67 other expansions that they put along with it that I all own. But I love it that much, even though I can count on the number of times I have played it on one hand. But that's why it's number 6, because it's that good for me. Res Arcana, number 5. This is the second most recent addition to my collection of all of the games on this list. And I heard a lot about this when it came out, and I sort of poo-pooed it, I'll be honest with you. And I ended up trading for it with a copy of the expansion in a trade on Board Game Geek. And I can easily tell you that this game will never leave my collection and would be one of the first ones that I start over with because, again, the simplicity of, relatively speaking, of the rules and how you are playing the game, of the one action, essentially, turn system as you're going around the table, but the depth and the challenge that it is trying to get the best, most efficient, most effective engine that you can in a completely unique manner, because you, unlike other games, only have a set amount of cards, and you have to choose how you are playing those cards over and over and over again in a very limited manner, as quickly and as efficiently as possible to generate the most points, when games may only be a matter of several turns as a whole. The expansion just gives it that much more nuanced depth that no matter how many times you have played it under like a dozen or two, you are constantly feeling that it is a different game. You are exploring more depths of strategy and combinations without it feeling like it's overstaying its welcome or making you too much brain burn up here at the same time. It has enough of that fantasy theme to draw you in, but you can easily look past it if you so choose to emphasize and focus on the tremendous, I don't want to say thinky fun of the game that it is as a whole. Because this is sort of the quintessential tableau management engine building type of game. It hits the sweet spot that I can play as a 3 or 4 player game just as easily as it adapts without having too much swinginess as a 2-player game with myself and my wife. And that is also relatively uncommon and highly enjoyable. And that's why it's on the list. Now, next up, number 4 on the list, On the Underground. Now, this takes the classic Ticket to Ride, if you're not familiar with this, and this game was out of print for a while, and then it was reprinted on Kickstarter by LudiCreations. It takes your classic Ticket to Ride, moving along a train route, and tweaks it just enough that it makes it slightly more strategic, very much more tactical, and point-driven in a completely different way. Because you have these destinations that you are led to know where they are by revealing them at the beginning of the turn. And then you have a passenger that is choosing to go to the nearest one or two each round, and utilizing whatever train route gets him there without having to walk. So you are trying to position your tracks in his way, so he is forced, or she, is forced to use your trains over somebody else's. You are essentially picking up and delivering the passenger each time without having to actually do the picking up and the delivering yourself, as that is what the game is doing each turn. You are just trying to make the most desirable route for that passenger every single time, no matter what corner of the map they are trying to travel to. You are also doing it while controlling anywhere of 2+ lines at the same time. So you are weaving your lines in and around your own lines as well as other people's lines, depending on the player count. Again, a game that is thinky, but not overly thinky that you feel like it is overwhelming in terms of what you're trying to do because you're just laying tracks down. It's great. It takes the Ticket to Ride mechanism of laying tracks down and brings it to the next level beyond just the simple, straightforward fun that Ticket to Ride is. It's that next notch up if you're looking for that slightly added level of complexity and skill. And that's why it's on the list at number 4. Stop me if you know where I'm going. Number 3. You didn't think I was actually not going to include something like this, did you? Aeons End. Now, which Aeons End, you can make an argument. I'm going to, for the sake of this conversation, make it Aeons End War Eternal, because that was really the first one I dug my little grubby claws into and found out the depth of my enjoyment for a fantasy mage magic wielding cooperative deck builder. Now you can make an argument in this game that there is way too much stuff, and the variability between all of them is not as significant. But they keep coming back with more. They keep coming back with creative ways to give us more options, whether it's legacy or campaign or just straight up deck building or incorporating previous stuff into the new format. They have created a juggernaut-esque in the deck building scheme of things in terms of IPs and brands. And that is why I have almost everything out there for Aeon's End already. It is my favorite deck builder. Period. Have I played it all? No. Am I going to be playing it all anytime soon? No. Does that stop me from getting more of it? No. I like it that much. The monsters are that unique. The spells are just that much different. People talk about it being too easy. People talk about it being too hard. It's just what you want it to be. If you want to pick the cards that go in the marketplace that you are buying in order to match up somewhat similarly to the monster you're fighting and the nuances you need to be aware of, whether it's damaging the city or healing your mages or somewhere in between, or just damage dealing the most you can, you can. Or if you're crazy like me and you don't mind losing a bunch, you just randomly pull 9 things that kind of sound good and you see what flies. And that's the fun of it, is you can do it either way, be right, have a good time, and also be challenged because of how the game is set up, and it gives you and keeps you on your toes. I really enjoy the no shuffle, deck flip, discard pile mechanism. I enjoy the variability and the randomness of the turn order deck, even though we have all been screwed by it by having the monster or the boss go at the end of one round and the beginning or two at the next round. We have all had it go down to literally the last turn order card. And if it is the boss, we're going to lose. And if it's one of the mages, we win. And isn't that the purpose of this game, or a game like this? To create that element of things as superheroes that are straining to win, not superheroes that are just sort of flicking the bad guy away, you know? If the game's too easy, you're not going to enjoy yourself either. And this strikes that delicate balance oh so well for me, along with its many iterations. And that's why it's number 3 on this list. Number 2, again, my list would be wholly incomplete if I did not include this as well as the Jagged Earth expansion of Spirit Island. Spirit Island is probably, now I said Aeon's End was my favorite deck building. This is probably my favorite cooperative game, even more so than The Loop being my most favorite of the pandemic-esque games. This is my most favorite cooperative game, period. The biggest problem with this game is the overhead and the learning curve. It is not intuitive. It takes area control and it takes variable player abilities, variable asymmetric situations, wraps them all in a very tight, complex bow, and expects people to be able to mitigate when we are used to eliminating. The name of this game many times is not win, it is survive. And it is not you are the invading force taking over, it is repelling the invading force. You are the natives, which is a complete twist on things, as spirits buffing off the colonists. And it does it in such an unduplicated, unreplicated way, even though it's almost been out for half a decade, that it has been not replicated yet. And each of the expansions, the promo packs, the big box expansion of Jagged Earth adds just more amazing, nuanced, balanced complexity to this game in a great way. Because this is one of those games that, I'll be honest with you, I played this once with my game group not knowing fully the rules, and it was horrible. Absolutely horrible. This is not a game you play without knowing, trying to learn flying by the seat of your pants. And it turned me off for quite some time. Until I finally pulled it out and made myself try playing it solo two-handed. Once. And then twice. And then 3 times. And then I realized, once it clicked, wow. I love this game. This is everything a hard co-op is, that prevents significant quarterbacking. Again, how much you choose, essentially, like with all games. But you are so worried sometimes about what you're trying to have to do, as well as talking to the other people to play with them, not for them, that it makes it great in that tied in, shared experience complexity to overcome the difficulty that the game presents you with in the first place. Is it for everybody? No. Is the aesthetic, the game presence on the table the most appealing? Heck no. Does the gameplay, the enjoyment of said gameplay, make up for any of that for me? Without second thought. Storage is a mess. Some people are not going to like the way that certain spirits play, or the outside of the box thinking in terms of how you're going to be manipulating cards and your own allies as well as the enemies on the board. But all in all, it is probably one of the greatest game experiences and enjoyments that I have of any game playing on a regular basis. And that is why it is number 2 on the list. Number 1 on this list, and I changed this one before filming this, but I think it doesn't get enough due diligence and it's overlooked, and I'm going to give it some recognition. If you're not familiar with what I'm showing you, this is Hive. This is probably one of, if the not best, abstract 2-player games, period, out there. Bar none on the board game geek scene. You have your set of insects, your hexagonally shaped insects. You have the opponents, and you touch them head to head until you are able to encircle and ensnare their queen bee so that there is a tile on every single side. And it gives you the variability in terms of each of these insects having a slightly different way that they move and engage in the hive that you are creating in the center of the table in the first place. The strategy at first seems very straightforward, but only after a few games do you start to unlock the potential that this game truly has in terms of depth and strategy and management of your powers. Play a tile or move a tile. It's not complex. But there are literally strategy guides, chess-like strategy guides out there for the depth and the skill that this game can command. This is a game, of all of the games on this list, of all of the games on Board Game Geek, one of the ones that I would argue people would still be playing 50 years from now very easily. That would stand the test of time. It is probably, if not one of my favorite, maybe possibly even my favorite 2-player only abstract game. There are several others that are close, like Tak, or Zar, or even Yinch. But this one, I think, beats them all. And that is why it is number 1 on the list. Hive. Now, go get the pocket version, because it's better, and it also comes with 2 of the little expansions. You heard it here first, or second, or third, or fourth. But that's why it's number 1 on the list. Okay, that's my list. 10 games that I thought you should know about from my personal collection that I love, that I would rebuild in a heartbeat if I lost them. Hope that tells you a little bit more about my preferences, my enjoyments, my likes, my dislikes, everything else in between. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for putting up with me. Thanks for just clicking and being willing to tolerate me. I'll see you around. Stay classy.